Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Letsie Khabele. Letsie is an Austin-based entrepreneur who brings a deeply transformative and effective approach to both education and business development. At age 26, he co-founded and led the Khabele School, which was one of the first schools in the country to embrace and institute entrepreneurship and daily mindfulness in its methodology. Letsie was also the CEO of the tech software company Trails.by. He is currently the co-creator of the Coe School. He's a philanthropist, public speaker, and a leadership and strategy consultant. So Letsie, that's an incredible intro. You've obviously done a lot, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do, man.
All right, thank you. I'm first of all, Kylan. I'm really happy to be on the show, and what I'm right now working on is what we call the Coe School and Coe Incubator, and it's basically a community for high school students who want to not only get prepared for college, but be able to go straight into an entrepreneurship life or straight into making a real difference in the world actually right now, as opposed to the construct that I think that most of us inherit, which is you have to get an education and learn certain things, and then sometime in the future, once you get that certificate or degree, then you can actually go out and make a difference in the world. And I think because a lot of changes have been happening on the planet, including changes in technology, that the whole script has been flipped, and we are kind of leading or doing our best to lead that movement and demonstrate that young people can actually make a difference and provide value right now, and not play that same sort of construct that we've been doing for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, it's interesting how we fall into this status quo mindset where you have to go through grade school and high school and then 4 years or 6 years of college before you can provide any actual value to the world. You got to learn how first, which is totally not the case. So what's
can I say one more thing about that? That's for me, that what I've noticed is that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is how it affects adults, which is that once I've gotten that degree, or once I've gotten that certificate, I'm done learning. Now it's about me, building or contributing or whatever, but I'm done learning. And people who hold on to that mindset are really suffering and are going to continue to really struggle. And I think it's part of the discontent that's happening in our country right now, is that a lot of adults who have that mindset, like, hey, I graduated from high school. Hey, I graduated from college. I'm done. And now you're telling me that, I've got to go get a whole new job with whole new skills and got to start learning again. That's for children, So that's the two sides of a coin that I think we're being forced to throw away both. So young people can learn and build now, and older people, adults, can continue building, but they also need to learn. And it's a lifelong experience of contributing and learning. So it's this like inwards and outwards almost like a yin yang, breathe in, breathe out experience that we can have, as opposed to you just take in as a child, get your certificate, then you give out as an adult, which is the old model.
Yeah, give it out as an adult for 20, 30 years in a career and then retire versus I think you're absolutely right with, I mean, even if we're just talking about technology, the way technology is progressing, how fast new companies and new technologies are just taking over the world.
Yeah.
It's becoming more pertinent now than ever to be able to know how to be able to learn how to learn.
Exactly.
And know how to learn and have that be a habit. So I'm curious with KoSchool then, give us like a practical example of how, however the way KoSchool is designed, how you're instilling that mindset in your students or participant of entrepreneurship, being a creator, a builder, and a continual learner.
Great. One of the ways it shows up is just if you walked into the school, and we call it a school and an incubator, and I can explain that later. But if you walk in and you just watch the people, it's rare that there's an adult in the front of the room and all the students are facing the adult. That's a rare experience. It happens every once in a while, but for the most part, it's people, human beings of different ages, oftentimes in circles. Oftentimes, we do a lot of Socratic practice, so they'll get a text that is not dumbed down for their age. It's not like it's text that any adults would even be challenged reading, and we talk about big ideas together. And we explore ideas and we learn how to communicate and share. And then off of that, the students learn how to write and express themselves in other ways. But it's not so much, we really let go of the idea that the adult has the expertise and the knowledge, and we're trying to try to transfer that into the minds of the children. That is a very condescending and ineffective or an increasingly ineffective model of education. Now it's about these human beings like being engaged in these big ideas and problem solving and struggling to figure things out together, with the young people's perspective being as valid as the older people's perspective, as opposed to it's the older people's perspective that's valid and the younger people that need to adopt that perspective. So one of the ways it shows up is in Socratic. Another way is we have what we call math problem solving. So it's kind of Socratic, but math based. So we like have these challenging problems, and then the students are kind of struggling and working and trying to, solve them in their own way, because most problems, as any entrepreneur knows, can be solved in many different ways. There's not one way, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of breaking that model down. And then the other thing that's really important about KoSchool is a focus on personal development. So the inner work that we need to do to be powerful, especially in a time of rapid change, is essential. We do live in a time of where the speed of change is increasing, and a lot of people would say the speed of change is accelerating, not just increasing. And so to deal with that, to deal with the disruption, to deal with the natural fear that comes up, we need to have a strong sense of ourselves, and a self-confidence and a self-awareness. And so that's a big component of KoSchool, and we spend every day working on that, every day working on Socratic, and every day working on problem solving. And then the students also have the opportunity to pursue what they're passionate about. Some of the students are interested in going to college, and they're working, on AP classes. Some students are, in addition to that, are wanting to create projects that they're passionate about, and we support them doing that. Some students aren't interested in going straight to college, and we do not push all of our kids to go to college, even though we're a private school. That seems like a thing that all private schools have to do, because that's how, they tend to build reputation. But we've really let go of that model because we know that people are increasingly understanding that that's not the best solution for everybody. A lot of people come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, end up working at Starbucks, and just being, it's not great, and not having the skills they need and the sense of confidence they need to go out into the world powerfully. So one quick example is, we're pretty small. We just started our third year. This is my second school. My other school was started about, I guess, 15 years ago. But this school that's tiny, we have a 19-year-old who graduated last year who started working for a fast-growing startup and is already the chief marketing officer, has a team. She's like co-building this amazing startup as a 19-year-old. And
that's so cool.
And those stories for me, when I've watched students go straight into either the business world or entrepreneurship world and start killing it, those are some of my most inspiring stories. I also have stories of students who graduated and gone to Stanford and Harvard and all that, and that's great. But really, my most inspiring stories are those students who they just jump into their self-expression in their life and they're creating it, and they're not relating to themselves as, oh, I'm just 19, so I can't do this, and it's incredible. And that's what kind of like what I live for and what drives me the most.
Wow. That's incredible, man. No kidding. I have a lot of questions. First one is it just for high school students, and is it like, the equivalent of like 9th through 12th grade kind of thing?
Yeah. We have 8th grade through 12th grade right now.
Okay.
And we're also looking at, and working on starting a post high school, almost like college, but it would be like a 1-year program where, we would have the students connect to, businesses right after, so they would actually have a good paying job waiting for them right after. So we're building that. We're in the ideation phases of it, but that's our next aspiration.
Is that kind of like, would that be kind of like an apprenticeship structure, or?
Yeah, it would be partially apprenticeship in a design thinking company, because we feel like design thinking skills are incredibly important in this new economy.
What do you mean by design thinking company?
So a design thinking company or consultancy is a company that helps to solve problems for businesses and organizations. So it could be anything from something that is like societal improvement. Like one example would be, there's a state in India that is having water resource problems, and you need a company to figure out how to solve that problem. Now, to solve that problem, what's happened in the past is you've had like the academics in one area, and maybe the people affected by the problem in another area, and maybe some entrepreneurs in another area trying to work it out. Right. What design thinking does is it brings people with diverse opinions together at the same table to actually more effectively solve problems. And so why we're really passionate about design thinking is because it also allows young people who have a diverse and different perspective than, say, entrepreneurs, older entrepreneurs or business leaders or whatever, to contribute to solving problems. So the idea is, as we move forward as humanity, instead of us just trying to figure out our problems in silos, what structures do we need to get people who are coming from diverse perspectives that are all valid to work on the problem together in an effective way. And design thinking has a lot of structures like that, structures and procedures to help people do that. So it's anything from, the social stuff to we have the company that we're thinking of collaborating with is working with one of the big uh, uh, male companies. I'm sorry, I've got to keep it kind of. I got to talk around it a bit, but
Right.
around those those boxes that you drop mail into.
Yeah.
They're working on the next generation of those. So it's kind of more mundane, but
yeah.
it's something where, we have to have empathy for the person who's actually using it to develop something that is actually easier to use and works with our systems and all that. So that needs design thinking as well. So it's got a lot of applications. I'm just trying to give you the range of where design thinking is useful.
I see. But the bottom line is you're trying to connect your students who are interested in it with companies or other startups that are in this kind of underneath this design thinking,
a
mode of operation.
Yeah. And generally entrepreneurship is, a big element of entrepreneurship is solving problems, right? Is like finding the pain point, and then, creating a solution that provides value in the marketplace. And that is a design thinking process. And so we feel like part of building these great entrepreneurs and leaders is helping them develop these design thinking skills. And you can do that in a university, or you can do that outside of a university. It's not required. You're not required a degree to be able to do that effectively. And I think we're all learning that ourselves.
You think we're what?
We're all learning. I think all entrepreneurs are either consciously or unconsciously growing in that area.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that the companies that work best for these entrepreneurial-minded students are younger startups or more dynamic companies. I mean, you probably don't find a company, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably don't find a company that's been established a long time that has really kind of set systems and ways of operating that's very conducive to what you're looking for. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, somebody that's been around a long time.
Absolutely, but I think a lot of those companies are in for a wake up call.
Right. Yeah. Gotta stay innovative.
Right.
So do you have, so when you say like, the adults or the teachers, so is it like a regular high school in that you do have like maybe one, teacher or facilitating adult per kind of period or class?
Yeah. Oh, we definitely have adults there. I mean, myself included. We have what we call guides. We don't have teachers. We don't call them teachers. We call them guides, and the guides work with the students to help clarify and develop their own goals. And then they also facilitate at times the Socratics and the problem solvings. But if you came to our school right now, you would see a lot of times where there are classes without an adult in the room. The student, and you try to catch them like goofing off. They're not. They're completely engaged, and these aren't necessarily students who were like that before they came. We just gave them the environment and the respect and the trust to actually do their thing.
Yeah, to self-direct their education. It's interesting.
And we feel like that is the future of education. Whether people drop out or not, education is essential and is lifelong. At least learning is. I mean, people define education in different ways, but I'm talking about learning and passionate learning. And I know personally that, while I've spent a lot of time I graduated from college and all, I learned a lot more outside of college than I did inside of it. And it really was that shift that I had where I took ownership and full ownership of my learning experience, where I really grew. And when I was in colleges, I went to a good college. I just had this attitude of like, okay, let me learn what these people have to give me. But it wasn't an empowered relationship. So with KoSchool, we're really trying to not continue that sort of mindset into the next generation, because while I think that mindset worked better 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, it worked. I think it is becoming completely antiquated and it just not effective in this new world.
So that's so interesting. Guides instead of teachers. So they're there to, instead of to teach, to facilitate.
Yeah.
Just facilitate the learning process and
Right.
encourage. Almost scheme for their success is a term I like to use. I think I stole that from Isaac Morehouse.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna steal that.
Go for it, man. Now you mentioned earlier that you would give them text or work that is hard to read or hard to understand. Like even an adult would maybe find it challenging. I'm curious what the philosophy is behind that.
Well, I with the old educational model, it was almost like a factory assembly line, right? So
totally.
you would early on you'd give this sort of text or this sort of challenge, and then once they get to the next stage, you go on and on. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist around it. I don't believe that traditional education was designed to keep us down. I think that it came from a really logical and well-intentioned mindset around from the industrial era and around a perception that our culture has about children, which in my opinion comes from this country's Puritan origins, which is kids really need discipline and control and need to be almost like tamed like a wild horse, So it just came from these mental models that have been around a while, but aren't really objectively true. With our students who are from 8th grade on, they have the capacity to engage in any sort of big idea conversation that adults are. They care about good and bad. They care about about peace and how to create that. They care about right or wrong. They care about love and hate and all these. They just care about them. And there are all these really great texts that are around our society and in other cultures that we can, if we take our time to patiently go through it with them and read and hear their ideas and their, people wrestling with ideas, and I love that. Like if you're in one of these Socratics, your brain starts hurting because you really you're really trying to figure this thing out. It's a big question, a big question for humanity or a big question for you. And so 8th graders, I mean, even younger, and we don't have younger students, but I've got a 7-year-old son, and a lot of these conversations I can have with him, and he's got an opinion. And I'm not saying I always agree with his opinion, but I know that he has one. It's not like it's just going over his head. So we trust that the students can engage in these same, and they can, these same sort of topics. And we just take our time and go through the text. We don't push everybody through. The students obviously take a lead in facilitating the pace. And it just becomes this community where we're engaged in these big ideas and we're trying to figure out some big problems that we have as humanity and trying to figure out big problems that we have individually, like how do I live a great life and how do I be the best person I can be and how do I resolve my fears, or how do I integrate my fears, or do I integrate them or do I run away from them, or it's like all these things that matter for everybody.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's great. I wish more schools would teach that. So I keep it up, man. I'm curious, do you have any form of standardized tests or like answer keys, anything like that? Yeah.
So we needed, and I'm going to say this on the podcast, but we needed, I'm not supposed to say this. We needed cover, to do what we wanted to do. And our cover is the SAT. we do not teach to the SAT. We do not try to get the kids ready for the SAT, but we trust that because their minds are engaged and they're really spending their days engaged in this like cognitive wrestling that we do, that these synapses and new patterns and all that are happening that are going to manifest on the SAT. So we give the SAT twice a year to every student, from 8th grade through 12th grade. It's a non-pressurized experience. We're not, they take it so much. If you're taking it twice a year, it's not a big deal. But what we've demonstrated is significant gains in the SAT without teaching to it. And it allows us not only to, go to the parents in the community and go, look, trust what we're doing, even though it's outside of what you normally consider as a good educational approach. Even though we're not teaching, trying to implant the kids with these ideas constantly, and we're helping them learn for themselves, and we're helping them develop their, self-confidence and their learning capacity. Even though we're going kind of inside out as opposed to outside in, we're going to have some sort of measure that's outside of us that you get to see. And so, we're just not screwing around all day. This is the real deal. So we have that, and we also have AP tests that our students can choose to take. A lot of our kids take AP classes, and they're taught in our way. But at the end of the class, they take the AP test, and we've had students as young as 8th grade pass these advanced placement college credit classes, and but going through the process in a way that's not dumbing them down or creating that reinstilling that mindset of you're this passive learner that needs to learn this expertise outside of you, but something way more engaging than that. Although they can demonstrate like the facts on the test.
Yeah, using that as kind of a cover definitely makes sense, because there's a lot of, well, not a lot actually, but there's more and more companies, I think, like private schools, education-related startups like yours coming out of the woodwork and basically protesting the current system by building. But it's still kind of, I feel like it's where maybe homeschooling was 5 or even 10 years ago. It's still a little bit taboo. So it totally makes sense that you'd want to still engage your students in a according to society, very standardized tests. Yep. And if they're acing that, especially at the younger age, then obviously you're doing something right. Yeah,
and they're either acing it or they're rapidly improving without teaching to the test, and that's
which is fascinating.
I think that schools get confused, and I'm going to do a little rant on this. A lot of schools are confused between the source of results versus the results. So in the case of going to school, you want to demonstrate results on tests, and that makes sense. But the source of good results is actually cognitive development and intellectual engagement and being present in class. But what a lot of schools have done is they've forgotten that the source is different than the result. And now they just focus on the result. So they start teaching to the test. But what happens is test scores go down. Kids become less engaged. They're less, motivated. And it's resulted in the educational system that we have. And we're just at this really interesting point as a culture where a lot of people are dissatisfied with the current educational system, but aren't yet willing to jump into something else. So it puts us in a position where we do need a cover, which it's not that detrimental to what we're trying to do. So it's not a big deal, but we're just at this interesting point around education where everybody's dissatisfied, but not really ready to do something truly new and relevant and effective.
Yeah, you hit it on the head, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's a great way to describe it. Let's see. I'm curious. It sounds like the way you've described the students at your school that they're they're happy to go there. They're happy to go there to learn, to be self-directed. You mentioned you're walking into a room, there's no adult, no teacher there, and they're still learning instead of goofing off and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like, at least I was homeschooled most of my life, but I did go to private, high school for 2 years. And boy, it's like if the teacher was out of the room, we were just screwing off like, nothing else. Like nothing could keep us focused. And there was just I didn't want to go to school. Most of my friends didn't want to go to school. And the people that did were just so caught up in this competition within the system. They got their personal kind of gratification from acing the tests and being in the top percentile, whatever.
Yeah.
What would you say? How would you pinpoint the difference there? Like, what is it that decides that, in an organization like yours or just maybe a public school, what is it about the learning or the way you implement, I don't know, the systems in the school and stuff that makes that divide, that determines whether it's going to be that way or what you're describing?
Well, I think even I've had that experience. I totally relate. And even the last school that I started had elements of that as well. And there are a lot of good things too. But I think the difference, and not to get too philosophical, but the difference is whether you have an adversarial relationship with the students or not. Despite my best attempts and a lot of educators' best attempts to create, every educator wants to create classrooms where the students are inspired, engaged, and they want to come to school. And I don't know. There might be some sadistic, there probably are some sadistic.
Oh, I had a few.
Yeah, but okay. So yeah, I won't be too idealistic, but most of them, let's just say most, want to create that thing. And most schools talk about themselves like that, especially private schools. Like, come to my school and your child's going to be engaged and want to go to school and be happy and be, love learning, right? The love learning thing. But I think the fundamental problem that I got stuck with in my first school, that most schools are, is that adversarial. It's fundamentally adversarial. I have data, information, knowledge, and I'm trying to put it in your mind. And, but I'm willing to manipulate you about it. I'm willing to try to make it engaging. I'm willing to try to use video, or, it's like all these different ways to try to be adversarial in a nice way, but it's fundamentally adversarial. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just I'm trying to do something onto you, right? I think that young people, like any people, can sense that. They sense that, and the natural reaction is to either avoid or maybe succumb for a while and build resentment and then react, or be one of those kids who are like, oh yeah, I'll take it. I'll be the good one, which then has an impact everywhere else, but it's this game. It's a game that people don't even see anymore, that schools play, that we've been playing for hundreds of years. It's a game, and it worked for a while. It doesn't work. I don't think it works anymore. But it is fundamentally adversarial, and what we're doing is really doing our best. And I'm not saying that we're perfect on this, but we've done a much better job. I've done a much better job than I did in my last school of really, like I was saying, going inside out and really what do you want? What do you want? To the student, what do you really want? And what I found is the vast majority of students, when they are honest and when they're they're calm, they're in a good state, what they want is, just basic, to keep it basic, they want to be successful. at whatever they're doing. And I think there's this human thing that we want to be successful at whatever we're doing. Even when we don't like what we're doing, we want to be successful at whatever we're doing and get it complete and then go do what we really want to do. But when we're playing games that even we don't like and we're being unsuccessful, it like gnaws at us. It like affects this is most of us. I'm not saying this is good or bad, but this is just something I've noticed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little bit off, but
no, it's great.
We try to, work on them to not work on them, work with them to find out what their goals are, what they want, and then support and, like you said, scheme for their success for those goals. And that for some students, that takes like a development of trust because they've played the other game so long and they just assume that's what we're doing, so it takes a little bit of time for them to go, oh no, I really am here for me,
Right.
But I think normally it takes maybe a month or 6 weeks. And then the students they see it with the other students. They're like, oh, no, really, like when there are no adults in the room, they're engaged, and they're engaged because they're having fun. Like it's like fun and interesting. It's not because, somebody's they're not doing the goody two shoes thing, which is what one of the roles that is played in traditional education. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Well, I was going to ask, do you find it's difficult sometimes to get someone, say maybe at the 8th or 9th grade, to really think about, analyze, and define their goals, like their passions, what they really want out of life, their strengths and weaknesses? You find that difficult at all, or?
I think the difficulty is I only find difficulty when students feel like they're making a decision for life. But it's not, one of the things that we remind them is it's not for life. It is for life, but life right now. You know what I mean?
This season.
This season. And it could be that you are creating goals around, what you do for the rest of your life, but you can also recreate goals next year. Do you know what I mean? It just gives you what is it? A light post. What are those things? Light.
Beacon
on the ocean, a beacon. Something to move towards that is actually genuinely something you care about, whether it is somewhere in the future or it's somewhere like next week.
Yeah.
And when they have that freedom, like they're not committing, we have this fear of like, what am I committing to, and how am I going to be held accountable? And, am I going to really want to do this? Once the freedom, they understand that they have the right and capacity to change their goals whenever they want.
Yeah.
Whenever they want, they're powerful beings. They can change their goals whenever they want. Once they have a sense of that, and they have the trust that we trust them, then I think it's easy I found that 8th graders, 9th graders up through 12th grade, they can come up with goals that light them up.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. It's almost like you are with that young generation, you're having to break a mindset that's been around for, their parents' lives and their grandparents' and great-grandparents' lives, which when the world wasn't like it is now and it wasn't changing so fast, really that was the correct mindset to have. You needed to learn a specific trade or skill.
Yep.
You had to be a specific kind of produced product into the workforce or the military or whatever.
Yeah. And
that's what you did for 20, 30 years. It was secure. Then you retired. You got your pension. Now it's completely different. I've noticed in an increasingly people are getting further away from placing too much value on like 5 and 10-year goals or discovering your life purpose.
Yeah.
And increasingly the most successful people that I get to talk to, they're focused on like the next 3 months, maybe a year at the most. And it's because things change so fast and there's so much potential to, in 90 days, build I don't know.
Absolutely.
Dude, you can do a lot.
No, I mean, we live in amazing, crazy times that, as far as I know, are completely unprecedented. One of the things that I do a lot whenever I speak to adults or to parents is I ask them, I might say, like, it's very simple, like, close your eyes and imagine a social media expert, somebody you go to for social media help, which is a big deal for a lot of companies. And it's got billions of dollars behind it, as we know. And so they imagine it. And then I ask them, is that person younger than you or older than you? And most of them, vast majority, say younger. And so, what's going on? For the first time, as far as I know, in history, there's this huge part and it's real, it's not theoretical, this real part of the economy where the experts are younger than a lot of the adults, So now, up until this moment, it was typical that experts would be older, and it was that kind of like, top down thing that mentality that could fuel colleges and universities and schools in the way they approached education. But now we've got this thing where it's not actually always consistent. I'm not saying that all the experts are young now and all the non-experts are old, but now it's all mixed up.
The ratio is a lot different. Yeah, totally.
It's all mixed up. And so how does that affect how we approach education? If we've got this thing, if we've got all these, and it's not just social media, it's all these new technologies that are going to have these huge impacts on our lives and our economy. And a lot of the experts happen to be younger. What do you do with education then? Well, I think people are going to sound like I'm sounding right now, which is like confused. Like, I don't even know what to do with this. And I do think this is an unprecedented time, and people who try to change their parenting or change how they educate or run their schools or whatever, I think a lot of them have not yet grokked or integrated what a massive thing that's happening right now. I mean, we really need to rethink a lot of those assumptions that we have about young people and about, learning and about when learning starts and when it stops and when contributing starts and when contributing stops, and how we design these communities of learning needs a radical rethink, not the like, oh, we're going to just, add this new test or spend more time in PE or add a new computer lab. Like that is not going to make the difference.
For anybody listening to this, if they're interested in digging deeper into this kind of philosophy, are there any books or sources or websites or tools that you can recommend that have kind of influenced you and your thinking?
I think a lot of what's happening on the in the podcast realm and new books that I know you're familiar with, like whether it's 4-Hour Work Week or Seth Godin stuff or it's everywhere. It's just not, people haven't been literally applying it to education yet. It's like we're separating these two worlds, so it's convenient. It's like, oh yeah, there are a lot of parents and adults who are like, yeah, I totally listen to Tim Ferriss and I totally listen to I know the stuff is happening and but I'm still gonna send my kid to a traditional school and make sure they get A's and B's. It's like, cares about totally. A's and B's.
So it's really compartmentalized. Like I want to be an entrepreneur, but first I got to go to business school or go to 4 years to get my liberal arts degree, then I can start reading 4 Hour Work Week or something, versus just integrating the two like you are. That's brilliant.
Yeah, thanks.
Love it, man. In your experience, since you've had two schools, you've seen your methodology and practice with several different students and stuff, and see them go from high school to college and probably beyond. Speaking to people who may be listening, what kind of person do you think should go to college, and that's a track that would work really well for them? And what kind of person do you think shouldn't? I know it's kind of a broad question, but
it's a great question. I mean, what I love the question, and it's actually a question I've never really asked myself. I feel, and what comes up for me is that if you envision yourself in a profession that requires college, just because that's where our society is, or for responsible reasons, like, for example, being a medical doctor, you should, that makes sense to go into some sort of institution where there's some clear training and accountability and all that. I think that's
totally.
That's great. Go to college, and go into the medical school profession. So there's certain professions that require colleges that I think is important to go to college if that's what you want to create in your life. And so that's clear. As far as anybody else, I would not go straight into college until I had some clarity about that. And regardless of whether I'm in college or not, I would relate to myself as ultimately responsible for my not only intellectual development, but personal development and my ability to provide value in the world. And I think that's ultimately what matters. My sister, I have a sister who's a prominent doctor. She's a gynecological oncologist, and she graduated from Columbia. She's like super smart and whatever, great human being. But she told me about doctors that were coming out of Columbia that had done residencies and everything, and were totally just struggling with their life and struggling with making money and paying their student loans and all that, because ultimately they still needed the entrepreneurial mindset. Like, if you're going to go start your practice, or you're going to go work someplace, even having an entrepreneurial mindset and being willing to take initiative and see problems and address it, as opposed to just doing what a lot of doctors are trained to do, which is, to accumulate knowledge and learn certain skills. So I'm just trying to give that example, as even with going into a professional life, I've known people who graduated from Harvard Law School who have really struggled out of Harvard Law School because they really thought it was handled, but still need that entrepreneurial mindset. You still need to know, okay, there are problems out in the world. How do I provide value there? How do I, isolate the problem and contribute something? And how do I sell? Like all these things that if you've gone to Columbia Medical School or Harvard Law School, you might think, well, I'm above that, and maybe there are certain narrow tracks where you can be above that. Like, you can go into academia, but that's not that available for most of us. So I feel like regardless of whether you go to college or not, the entrepreneurial mindset and your willingness to be ultimately responsible for your learning are essential.
What do you think is the best way to go about becoming a better learner? Let's say we're talking to somebody listening to the show who really likes what you're saying and wants to be this kind of person, have these kind of qualities, but they don't have immediate access to maybe one of these alternative routes or schools. How would you give them advice to to become more self-directed with their learning, to become more entrepreneurial minded, instead of so focused on, I guess, the alternative? I mean, would you say a lot of it has to do with just discovering what you actually want to do with your life and what you're naturally interested in?
Yeah, I think that a lot of us maybe might not know exactly, like if you came to me and said, what's your exact life purpose? I don't know if I'd be able to answer that question, but I could answer, what I'm interested in. And I think most of us can. Most of us can have a sense of what we're interested in. I think what stops us is, not to blame everything on our educational system, but our parenting and our schools have instilled in us this mindset that we need an authority's support and okay and guidance and telling us what to do to be able to actually learn. Versus, I believe that I have that capacity to learn anything, and I know that's maybe a strange jump. But I do think it starts with the self-confidence or a personal choice that if I put my mind to anything, I can learn it. Now, I might need to reach out to mentors. I might need to reach out to, different people for help, but I can learn it. And I really feel like that is not there for a lot of people. And at least partially because we've been either trained out of that or we haven't been instilled in that from our experience with our parents and our experience in schools. So and I know that's not maybe 100% like tactical, but I do think it's essential that it's a belief that if I put my mind to something, I can learn it. I really can, and it starts with that. And a lot of people don't have that, but it's a choice, and you can make it at any moment. And for your listeners, make whatever that thing is that you think you can't learn, or you wish you need to go to some business school to learn. You actually can learn it, without going to that school. And it doesn't mean you're learning it all alone, but it means you're responsible for learning it, and you can do that. So I think once that step gets through, once you make that step, that's when you get creative. And it could look like, depending on the subject. I mean, I can't give, I don't know. There are different subjects and different things to learn, but depending on the subject, it could be, hey, how do I find a mentor that is demonstrating the results that I want? And, maybe how can I, get in communication with them and maybe have a mentor, maybe that could be part of it. How do I, find the books and the literature or research that I need? Okay, I'm going to look for that. How do I practice this on a daily basis? How do I embody this thing? Because I know if I put my mind to it, I can do it. And that's I think making that step opens up all sorts of possibilities. It gets your mind going, and over time you build confidence in yourself.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And right along with that, I will say, I've said it on the show before again, but action begets more action. The more you take action, the more you do things, and the more creative you are, the more creativity. Creativity is like it's a resource you'll never run out of. It's just an unending resource. And the more you do it, the more you'll gain. And the same with action. Take action on one thing, the next step will become clear. And I often equate it to the analogy of a very foggy ravine, and you're going across this ravine on a bridge, but it's so foggy you can't see the other side. But you just need to at least start walking across the bridge. And as you take that first step, as you get to the middle of the bridge, pretty soon the other side becomes clear, but you didn't see it starting out. Yeah. And that's also Successful Dropouts why we have the show, people like Letsie and the all the other guests we've had on the show, to show you that they've done it. Yeah. Why not you? So
yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful.
So let's talk about you for a second. I'm curious, what is a personal habit that you believe has contributed to the success you've achieved so far?
So one of my my personal habits kind of are dynamic. One of the personal habits that I've held for many years is mindfulness meditation, and most mornings I spend 20 minutes sitting on my bed with my legs crossed and bringing awareness to my breath. And that I noticed pretty early on that if I do that in the morning, my days tend to be more effective than if I don't. So it's very basic and it's very simple. It's so, simple. It's either brilliant or stupid. I don't know, but it's just something that has been really, really powerful for me. And it just helps me clear my mind. It helps me have a more exquisite and sensitive connection with my intuition. And I think that as somebody who chooses the business path or the entrepreneurial path or the successful path, whether dropout or not, having a connection with your intuition and your intuitive guidance is extremely important. And that goes back to that, willingness to trust yourself. And I found that when I trust that, I'm way more likely to make great decisions. Not that I've always made perfect decisions. And when I don't trust it, I'm way more likely to make poor decisions. So that's one. Another thing that I've been doing recently that's been really powerful for me is a practice of declaring my goals out loud. Either I'm with my fiance or I'm by myself, and then whatever the nervous feeling that comes up or the self-doubt, I kind of like let it out, exaggerate it out. So what that looked like is, if I have a goal of I'm going to have a great podcast with Kylan, right? And then I've got, but I don't have anything to say. I'm not valuable. I don't know what if I mess up, And then I kind of just like let it out, and then I go back to I'm going to have a great podcast with Kylan, and until those self doubts are gone. So
you sometimes just realize how silly your doubts and fears are when you say them out loud.
As opposed to suppressing it. I mean, what I've done for a while is, meditation helps it, but this one is really quick because normally I would just suppress it, right, and try to push through it. Especially I think as a man in this society, we're like trained to like push through, like come on, dig in. And so that's what I've done, and often, and it creates a lot of stress, and it's not, sometimes I'm effective, but sometimes I'm not, but I'm never relaxed, if I have that stuff and I'm pushing through it. So, this helps me get it out. And then what's there is, what's left is just my commitment or my goal. And then I can kind of relax into it.
That is so cool. I think I'm going to steal that. I'm going to try that just for today. Because I've gotten into that habit, but it's in writing form. It's in the form of writing it down, like conscious stream journaling. I'll just open a page and just everything, like frustrations, questions, everything goes out onto the page. And that helps me get rid of all of it. I've got my morning affirmations. I say those and it just reaffirms stuff. But I love saying it out loud because I just think it'd be more fun.
That's perfect. It is. I mean, I never saw it like that, but it's like verbal journaling. It's like getting that stuff out. Yeah. I do that too, actually. The journaling where I just let loose. Like whatever. And I do it it's weird. I do it in a specific type of handwriting, meaning I'm like messier when I do it. But but I just get it, all those fears and doubts, shame, guilt, all that, just like let it out. And and as opposed to push it down and push through. And I spent most of my time building my last school. I ran it for 11 years, suppressing and pushing through. And it was at a great cost to my marriage. I lost it, to my well-being, to my quality of life, and even built one of the biggest private schools in Austin. Starting at age 26. It was impressive and great, and but it all it just wasn't sustainable, and I had to go through that lesson.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
Do you get 8 hours of sleep?
I do. I probably average, I will say I do, but I probably average like 7 hours and 45 minutes.
Gotcha. Are you more of an early riser or a late worker?
I'm more of a late worker. I'm the worst at early rising.
Do you get more creative as the night goes on, and is that kind of why?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah.
Do you watch a lot of Netflix?
I used to. I've been watching less and less, actually.
Yeah.
And what have I been doing instead? So I'm engaged. I have a fiance. Thank you. And we spend a lot of time imagining our future and doing, mindfulness together and sharing crazy ideas together, and that's been really fun for me.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
do you read much, and if so, would there be any books you'd recommend?
I do. I just realized since Netflix has gone down, I've also been reading more. I have a goal to read a book a week, but I'm
Awesome.
not there yet. And my two favorite books that I share with people a lot are, one is Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. And what's powerful for me about that book is not that he came out of jail and he became president, but his time in jail is incredible to me. And that this man was in jail for 27 years, where he went in and he saw his little baby girl, and then the next time he sees her, and it feels like yesterday for him, she's a grown up adult. I mean, just imagine how hard that would be. But anyway, while he's in jail, he goes into jail, and these prison guards are horrible and racist and mean and cruel. And at the end of it, he becomes best friends with some of them. And he just engages. He was like, can I curse?
Yeah.
He was unfuckable with, like they just thought that they could mess with him, and he didn't lose his connection with them despite what they did. Yeah. So anyway, that's one of my books. And then the other book that I love and I constantly read or listen to is 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
It keeps me, I listen or read it now it just keeps me creative. I feel like it helps me think outside of the box.
Yep.
Which I, like anybody else, I think I tend to go back into, the box and the conventional way of thinking if I don't have influences like that.
Have you gotten a chance to get a hold of his new book, Tools of Titans?
Yeah, my fiance just bought it for me, and I just started reading it.
Yeah, that thing, I think the day we bought it, I couldn't put it down for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. That's actually how I learned a little bit more about meditation and what it actually is. Something like 80% of the people in that book practice meditation. Tim does a really good job of pointing out what are the consistent tools, tactics, and habits, and meditation is one of them. And so if any of you guys are listening, that is something all across the board. the most successful people do. So something to really pay attention to. Tools of Titans, again, is great to learn more about meditation. It's not necessarily, you tend to think very spiritual or religious related or based. It's not at all. And a great tool for that is Headspace. We're not sponsored by them or anything, but Headspace, the app, is what I use and what they recommend in the book. And they do a great job of leading you through a free kind of 10-day trial and stuff.
I just, can I say something? Or to that point, I think that being an entrepreneur and being a leader is risky. Like they're whether it's you're having cash flow issues for your business and you've got employees or just for yourself and you don't have enough money to pay your mortgage, or you take on trying to make a difference in the world and all of a sudden people are attacking you. And
check all the above.
Right. And what ends up happening is that if you don't have practice controlling your own attention, is you just get caught up in whatever is happening. And then when you're caught up and you go into anxiety or fear, what ends up happening from the neuroscience perspective is your frontal lobe kind of shuts down, amygdala hijack, and you get reactive and you're more likely to make dumb decisions. It's just how it is. Yeah. So one way of looking at mindfulness from a non-spiritual perspective is just practicing controlling your attention, keeping your attention on your breath as opposed to like thinking about what you're going to do later on for 20 minutes I've never done it the whole time perfectly ever.
Yeah.
But I'm getting better and I'm building a muscle around my attention so that if I'm the next day speaking or something in front of a group of people and somebody like yells out something nasty, I don't go into a spiral of like, oh, I'm not good enough, and and I screwed up, and I can bring myself back. Yeah. So mindfulness, meditation, I highly recommend.
What I didn't realize is that is like the base of meditation. It's literally I'll sit there for 10 minutes, and the entire time as I'm working with this app, you're just trying to keep your focus on your body and your physical self, and that's it. Like you work out your muscles to grow bigger, and people don't think about that. They don't associate the same tactic with your mind, but it's the same exact thing. And so when I meditate consistently, I notice throughout the day it's way easier to when my mind thinks, I wonder what's going on Facebook, to just stay focused, because that's the first thing I did for 10-20 minutes straight that morning, is stay focused on one thing. And so it changed my perspective of meditation. I definitely had some preconceived notions, and it's not what you think it is. Same with journaling, honestly. Journaling, I journaled in a very chronological way, like, Dear Diary kind of thing. I didn't actually say that, but journaling is more than that. It's a tool. And you can use it in various ways to work through problems and issues in your life. If you look back on the last couple weeks of my journaling, it will not make sense to you. It's not about what's happening that day. It's like random thoughts and questions and eureka moments and failures I'm just venting about. But anyways, Letsie, we're running out of time here, but I've got 2 more questions. Just if you have some brief parting advice for any of our listeners who are thinking of dropping out of school, but they haven't quite made that step yet.
Wow. Well, I guess it's kind of hard for me to give advice. Different people are in different situations, but what I would say for everybody is, and I really mean this, is you can't go wrong. Whatever you choose, like you trust yourself. You can't go wrong. If you drop out and you decide later on, no, I actually want to be in college or university, you'll go back and you'll do better and make more use of it.
That's a good point.
Than if you just stay in because you're afraid.
That's a great
and
point.
if you leave, that you're not going to go wrong. I just, and I'm saying that, but part of it, back to that like personal choice you have to make is this, I'm not going to go wrong. I won't go wrong, and I'm going to trust this. And it is not required for you to go to college to be successful, to be valuable, to be contributive. That is for sure. It's not required. So, follow your path and trust it, and know that even if you go off, you can come back, and that you have an important path of contribution and value, and just to trust it and move forward in the way that you feel called to, and you won't go wrong.
Freaking love it, man. How about on the flip side, any parting advice for our listeners who have already dropped out and they're already on that, entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I don't have anything really profound except for congratulations. Congratulations. And okay, here's the thing I want to say to those people who've already dropped out. I think in taking on the entrepreneurial path, one of the key things to focus on, if you haven't already, is empathy. And what I mean is really being able to get in the world of others and not be stuck in your own perspective. I found that there have been a lot of people who take on the entrepreneurial path who are not successful because it becomes almost like an internal game where they're not taking in information from outside of them. It becomes, they become stuck on how right they are about their product or how right they are about their service. Yeah. And there is something to, coming up with something that at times maybe the world isn't exactly yet ready for, and that's fine. But even still, you need to make sure that it's accessible for people without diminishing what you're trying to do. Make sure that you're accessible and what you're trying to contribute is accessible. So that takes empathy. That takes a willingness to ask questions and to inquire and to not have your pride be involved and not have your fear and anxiety be so high. And that's where meditation and mindfulness can help you. But to really listen and to really try to understand what your customers want and need and what really helps them. And if you can do that really well, that's the foundation for wealth and success. Yeah. You don't need college for that, but just that empathy, the willingness to listen, to try to understand, and then to help people solve a problem is key.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, man. And one thing you guys have definitely heard me say before is that all the money in the world, all the ideas in the world, all the opportunities in the world come from other people. And so the better you're at empathizing with other people, putting yourself in their shoes, developing relationships, networking, being grateful for the relationships in your life, the better you're at that, the more successful you're going to be. Just plain and simple. You'll find very few examples of very successful people who just locked themselves up in a room and created a product or a business from there. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, I think the best way is KoSchool.org. Okay. And if people want to email me and want to work together or start a school in your city or collaborate in any shape or form, my email address is my last name, which is Khabele, Khabele @gmail.com. And I do welcome any of your listeners to reach out if they have any ideas or want to collaborate or need some support. I would love to hear from anybody.
Awesome. Well, successful dropouts, you've been hanging out with Letsie and Kylan, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Letsie, and that's Letsie, into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish.